Greg, nice to have you back on the platform. Welcome.
Good morning, Sean. How are you?
Good. Now, the Aussies, they've turned it on ahead. They're being tough on the 501s again. Are we going to get more of them here as a result of this policy change, do you think?
Well, there's a huge irony, isn't it, the Australians doing this? What they once said that Australia was a country populated by those that the best magistrates in England chose to form their country. And, and I say that in jest, but it's, the irony of them doing this, when the injustices that were visited upon most of the first settlers into Australia. However, that's the Australian way, and this has become hugely politicised. Peter Dutton, who's the head of the opposition, leader of the opposition over there, the Liberal Party, he's really climbed into this whole law and order is always an easy win electorally. And as we saw it in the last election here, it's if all else fails, go to the public sphere of crime, and that's what they've done. So what was quite a sensible compromise between Albanese and Jacinda Ardern, which was, let's just see how Australian they are. I mean, no one objects if one of our guys gets on a plane, as an 18, 19-year-old, goes over there, does an armed robbery, they should be sent back. Right. That's our responsibility.
Yep.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, I've got a grandson who's was born here. He's about 10 months old now, living in Sydney. If he were to stay there and commit a crime when he was 20, he would, under these rules, he would still be eligible, unless, of course, he took out Australian citizenship, which is a way around this. But it's just absolutely ridiculous that they were bred as Australian criminals. But pure politics on the other side of the Tasman. That's all this is about. Funnily enough, I met a detective over there who took credit for this. He was a New South Wales detective. He says, "Oh, you're a Kiwi. I'm the guy that started this stuff," because he was working on some of the organised crime in Australia, criminals, and he realised that most of the top crims were either New Zealanders or from the Middle Eastern countries. And he said he had a mate who was a lawyer who told him about this new bill, the character test. And so they started applying it, and went through the whole place, every state, like an Australian wildfire. And they were all into it, and that was when it all started. The irony of it also started when, remember John Key and had a great relationship with the Australian Prime Minister at the time. Again, a bit like you, I can't remember which one. There were so many of them. And he was staying at the lodge in Canberra all the time. They were best of mates. It all happened under that time. And so it's just got worse and worse. There was a bit of a lull as a result of the agreement between Jacinda Ardern and Albanese, but it's reverted again, mostly because of...
It does have a real impact here on crime, Greg.
Absolutely. I mean, Australia, anyone who goes to Australia, everything they do, we do here. They do in spades. So very different people. And their organised crime is way more deeply entrenched. We didn't have... One of the essences of organised crime, you can't have organised crime. Everybody's got to be corrupt. Your judges have got to be corrupt. Your police have got to be corrupt. Everyone along the line. And that's always been the case, largely, particularly in New South Wales. They may have cleaned up a bit in recent times. And we've never had that here. And fortunately, I don't think... We'll get outbreaks of it. But the institutions are not corrupt here. And that's where real organised crime has got to thrive. When these guys came back, because that grew up, and the viciousness, particularly the preparedness just to kill or shoot anybody that got in your way. And we saw that here. Bay of Plenty, funnily enough, around Tauranga was where it really started to manifest itself.
All right, second thing, can you tell me, do you believe there are principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, and what are they?
Well, again, that's probably going to be a moot point because, again, I think New Zealand first.
It's not a moot point, it's a question, Greg. Do you believe
it's not going...
Do you believe that there are principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, yes or no?
Well, hold on. What does that mean? What does that question mean?
It means, do you believe there are principles of the Treaty of Waitangi?
Well, there is a Treaty of Waitangi, and there is, and it's written down. And in fact, one of the biggest debates that I've been involved in lately.
Are there principles of the Treaty of Waitangi?
Well, there is a Treaty of Waitangi, and I don't.
Is that a yes or a no?
Well, I'm not sure. You tell me. There is a treaty of Waitangi.
I'll accept the answer. I'm not sure. Do you think the country needs to be sure?
No, go back. Hold on. I'm not being... You're asking me, it's out of the blue, this question. What I do know is there is a treaty. And sit down, have a look and understand there's always going to be translations of any treaty.
No, I'm talking about principles.
Go back to first principles.
What are the first principles of the Treaty of Waitangi? Yeah.
Well, read the treaty, and you'll find out.
Where are they written down? Do you know what they are?
Well, there's a treaty, and then from the treaty, you work out. It's like we've got a treaty with. You talked about having a treaty with Australia with ANZUS.
What are the principles of ANZUS?
Or not sign, or whatever.
Are there principles of ANZUS?
There.
Yeah. So you saying you're not sure if there are principles?
Let's just say the treaty is probably based on principles.